Lai ke dan lu dan no jing ke drubun da da mi ke nan dan ro wa gun ji dra nan ji san pa tan che ke du da gi chu den do. In the language of the gods, Nagas, and Yaksas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Now, let's begin by setting the most magnificent motivation in the universe that we try to set before we start each teaching. And the more and more we can set this motivation as our norm for everything that we do, even if it's contrived, the more we'll be on our way to entering the Mahayana, to becoming a bodhisattva and actually generating this mind that for me at this point, when I do it, when I say it, is in a contrived way and isn't something that's a main mind that's always there. But what I'm doing now will cause that main mind to occur in the future because all results depend upon causes. Bodhicitta is a result, and that result requires mental bases and conditions for it to arise. And right now, my saying, I want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. I'm giving this teaching in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. May I in the future be able to give this teaching in the language of all sentient beings at their own particular aptitudes with 60 melodious rhythms, the way that Buddha can. So it's saying, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And this aspiration that we're familiarizing our minds with so that we can eventually always have it has as its basis some real prerequisites that we have to remember as we're trying to generate this mind as our motivation. We recognize that this mind came about because of our own recognition of the disgusting nature of cyclic existence, our own recognition of our own particular 8 sufferings and 6 sufferings and 3 sufferings. So it's from that perspective that we recognize that samsara has nothing to offer us, and that we are forced again and again and again into a set of, among the 4 or 5 contaminated, appropriated aggregates, out of control, forced because of our karmas and afflictions and corresponding seeds driven by self-grasping ignorance. So we're forced again and again and again, birth after birth after birth, into a set of aggregates that are contaminated, that necessarily have among the 3 types of suffering. Don't necessarily have the first 2, but necessarily have at least the pervasive compounded suffering, which means that one is not free. One is in the prison of cyclic existence. One is necessarily not free if one has a pervasive compounded suffering, and not being free pervades cyclic existence. So even if I am in a position where I don't have the suffering or suffering of change, if I have pervasive compounded suffering wherever I am, then that means that I'm just waiting and waiting for the next horrible thing to happen, even if I'm in a neutral space at that period. So recognizing the faults of cyclic existence, recognizing that the things I think that are happiness are the door to every pain I have, recognizing that I should strive instead, as Lama Tsongkhapa says, for liberation, recognizing that I want liberation so that I can be free from suffering, so that I can have happiness, then knowing there's a state which can be the most extreme state of that position is what then gets me into wanting to become a Buddha. So knowing that I suffer, knowing that I have a horrendous position, knowing that I want happiness. And when I see who has the most happiness, I find out that the being that has the most happiness is the Buddha. So if I don't want to have suffering and I want the most happiness, then that being who has the most happiness is the Buddha. So I come to recognize through this evolution of understanding my own problems and understanding that my own needs aren't fulfilled completely if I were to just get rid of my suffering and not take it to the next level. If I were to just get rid of my own suffering, say, oh, I can't stand samsara, I'm just going to get out of this for myself alone because I can't stand suffering. I can't stand the three types of suffering, and I'm done. Once I decide that I want to get out of this, I recognize that I, as a human, want happiness and I want to be free from suffering. And that state, which I can achieve at the medium scope level that we talk about, where there's an individual freedom from cyclic existence, where one achieves an abiding nirvana, one gets out forever, that state is incomplete. And I got into this process in the medium scope, recognizing that I just want to be happy and want to be out of suffering. And then I come to find out that that state of an abiding nirvana, the hearer solitary realizer, ejection from samsara without the rest of the path, without the Mahayana path, is incomplete in relation to themselves and in relation to others. So it starts with recognizing that it's incomplete in relation to yourself, and then you recognize the way to complete your potential is to cherish others more than yourself, to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So this recognition that it makes the most sense to do this starts with, hey, I want to fulfill all of my needs. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. The objective is to become a Buddha. And when you become a Buddha, you're fulfilling all of your needs. You're finishing off what you started in the medium scope, saying, hey, I want to be completely free from suffering. I want happiness. I want nirvana is peace. But realizing that it's an extreme of peace then makes me investigate further what a non-extreme would look like. If it's an extreme, it's not the best. No extreme is the best. So what is it that would make it so that I could have the best? Oh, relying on the bodhisattva path, relying on a path that leads to complete Buddhahood, relying on a path that says that your needs are the ones I'm going to focus on. There's a shift in perspective that needs to take place. So then we arrive at, if that's the case, how do I shift my perspective? How do I change this way of thinking? These things that I'm saying out loud, even when I'm saying them, sound crazy, that cherishing others more than myself is the secret to protecting myself and others. It sounds crazy when I say this, but if it's this secret that will allow me to fulfill all of my own needs and all of sentient beings' needs, then I need to figure out how to make this secret, how to discover this secret for myself. And that's what we're doing week after week after week, trying to figure out how to discover the secret of bodhicitta, the secret that if I want to have the highest amount of happiness, I need to love you, I need to care about you, I need to have compassion for you, and that you is at a macro level, and it means every single sentient being in the universe without exception. That's how I can have a mind that feels so good. The mind that feels so bad, this mind that's been circling, this me that's been circling in cyclic existence, has had a mind that believed in something that was false over and over again, therefore causing me to cycle in cyclic existence over and over and over again. And the afflictive, self-grasping ignorance causes me to stay in cyclic existence. But the self-cherishing attitude is not an affliction. It's a cognitive obscuration. It's an obstruction to omniscience. But the self-grasping ignorance that makes us become addicted to ourselves. We have, since beginningless time, this addiction to ourselves, this attachment to ourselves has been reinforced and reinforced. This bifurcation of self and other has been reinforced to the point where it makes sense that we cherish ourselves. And you can, the Here, a solitary realizer path is a path of cherishing oneself. And that's why we can say it's an obstruction to omniscience, because you can achieve nirvana and still have subtle self-cherishing attitude. So you see that self-cherishing attitude, even though it doesn't keep you in samsara, it makes you make bad decisions that keep you in samsara. But really, at the end of the day, it keeps you from being a Buddha because it makes you think you're more important than anyone else. And no one has ever become a Buddha who even had a biased attitude towards one being. So anyway, so let's begin this teaching by trying to set the motivation. First of all, we came to these teachings because we wanted answers. We wanted to know, why do we suffer? Why do I never seem to have satisfaction? Why over and over again do I have to lose friends? Why are people dying? Why every time that things that come together seem to separate, and that separation is so painful? Why do I have to meet with these things that I don't want? Why don't I get what I want? Why is my mind so heavy at times? Why can't it be light like I've experienced it before? I've experienced a lightness. Why is it so heavy? And then why does that lightness go away? And why do the things that I feel are so awesome after I'm having them all of the time, they're not awesome anymore? Why is this? And this is what brought me to the Buddhist teachings. And then we find out why it is. And then we recognize that, hey, everybody around wants happiness and wants to be free from suffering and has these same questions. And wow, how nice it would be, since I've seen a little bit of value in finding out the answers to these questions, if others could have the answers to these questions too. May I proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. So let's now, with this motivation of bodhicitta, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. That's why I'm here tonight. I'm not here to just learn more stuff so that I can talk about it and sound great in a coffee shop. I'm not here just to be able to convince myself that Buddhism is wrong. I'm here to keep an open mind. I'm not here to say Buddhism's 100% right. I'm here to keep an open mind. I'm not here to say it's wrong. I'm here to cut and rub it. I'm here to see if any of this makes sense. I'm here to see if this is logical. I'm here to see if this is something that I can apply to my life. And if I do, because it makes logical sense, can I discover what these beings are saying I can discover by relying upon these things? So the whole time we have to keep an open mind. We have to listen extremely well to the teaching, because we won't have anything to analyze if we're not listening extremely well and accumulating the information from hearing and the teaching. And if we don't listen really well, we may mistake something and then start analyzing the wrong thing. So if we're going to be good cut and rubbers, we have to have the starting material that's the accurate starting material to cut and rub. We can't just take, kind of what we thought we heard and cut and rub it. We have to take the authentic starting material, the authentic information that's systematic, and then cut and rub it. We have to hear it. We have to hear that in its entirety, and hear it again and again and again and again, so we make sure we hear it in its entirety. And that entirety is what we're going to analyze to see if it makes sense. Cut it and rub it, and then say, oh, this is gold, this isn't gold. This is garbage. Throw out what doesn't make sense. And even within the Buddhist tenets, we have to do that. We have to find that there are things that the Buddha said figuratively that were not meant for all practitioners. There are statements that the Buddha made that have to be interpreted and thought of as he just said them to help one person in a way that he knew needed to be helped in that way, and that would help them progress to the next thing and eventually have established conclusions that were at a higher rung on the ladder of the tenet systems. So we have to use our own analysis. We have to use our own mind, because there's so many things being thrown at us out there. This is Buddhism. This is kind of Buddhism. This is a hybrid of Buddhism. There's just so many things being thrown at us. And it's us that has to investigate. Does this make sense? Does this tally with reality? Can I find something that, is realistic in here for me to be able to be evolved? Or are these just words that are just so out there, they don't really have any meaning? using words like the void, just leaning into the void. Like, what does that mean? Becoming the whole, like saying things that don't have any real meaning. And when you say something like that, what do you have to really look at? We have to have the correct information to be able to analyze and make sense out of it. We can't say, oh, it's just so esoteric, it's just so profound that we can't use words. It's so profound that conceptuality just can't be used. This is actually the wrong way of understanding the Buddha Dharma because we get to the profound, we get to the non conceptual understanding of emptiness through the conceptual, through these concepts of logic and so forth, and establishing a generic image of something that's correct and that's replacing a generic image of something that's not correct. We currently have a picture in our mind of everything being intrinsically existent. We need to get a picture in our mind that everything isn't intrinsically existent. So, this evolution is going to take some time. It's a fun process, but it's not fun if you don't study because it just becomes totally confusing, becomes a total mess. None of it makes any sense. And we just make big statements like, I just want to love all beings. I really care. I love all beings. And then the next day, after you say, I love all beings, you turn on the news and it's time to go to war with a box with images coming on it and you in a room going, bah, 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 da, 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 da. Yeah. We're all so good at superimposing intrinsic existence, intrinsic qualities, intrinsic aspects on everything around us. And it keeps us in a prison. It keeps us from being able to experience what we really have as our potential. This box of intrinsic existence that we lock ourselves in. This box of grasping at ourselves as being self, intrinsically self, and you intrinsically other, that keeps me from being able to care for you. It's this prison, this box that keeps me from even being able to extend my hand to you. My hand hits it like this. The self-grasping ignorance that then makes the self-cherishing attitude make sense stops me from extending my hand because that's you. That's your basis is over there and my basis is over here. And I am my basis. You are your basis. Intrinsically. And that idea keeps me in a prison. That idea that I exist from my own side independently, that we're not interdependent, keeps me in a prison and keeps me from being able to reach my hand out to you and feel the warmth of another hand, which feels nice. It keeps me from being able to feel nice. It keeps me worried because I cherish myself more than I cherish you because I believe I exist from my own side and we don't have any interdependence. We don't have any relation. I don't have any gratitude to show you. We don't have any relationship. I pick some people that I'll feel closer to, but when it comes right down to it, my parts are more important than your parts, no matter who you are, because I believe that I, that is the designated object, is intrinsically one with the basis of designation. This is me over here. Or I feel like I intrinsically exist as a possessor or an operator of this machine thing intrinsically, that there's something separate from you. And when I go towards this I to see if it intrinsically exists one with my aggregates, these parts, or separate from it, this I that I feel so sure I should protect the parts of more than yours becomes very elusive and unfindable. Findable in a conventional sense, but still dependent in a conventional sense. So imagine those Buddhas in the space in front of us who've realized this, who've realized that the secret to everlasting happiness, having bliss that goes from bliss to bliss to bliss to bliss, is to learn that cherishing oneself is the problem that causes us all of our suffering. It switches back and forth. The Lojong teachings say that, but then they'll really say it's the self-grasping ignorance that's at the root that causes us all our problems and suffering. But think the self-cherishing attitude, even though we can take it with us to nirvana, it usually doesn't cause us good problems like nirvana. The self-cherishing attitude, it doesn't cause us a good problem like an abiding nirvana, an extreme of peace of an abiding nirvana. The self-cherishing attitude usually causes me to strike out or to grab for. Yeah. So those Buddhas in the space in front of us who no longer strike out, and when they grab for, it's just to help. It's not out of attachment. There's love without attachment. There's compassion without attachment. That disturbance of the mind isn't there when helping. That disturbance of the mind isn't there when they love someone who's suffering because they have a plan. We love people who are suffering and we don't have any kind of plan. We just see them as something we don't like the looks of over there. We don't like how it makes us feel over there. We have no plan. The Buddha has a plan. The Buddha has a complete plan. The Buddha has realized that the Buddha is not intrinsically existent. Sentient beings are not intrinsically existent. Sentient beings and the Buddha are just merely imputed in dependence upon a collection of among the 4 or 5 aggregates that serve as a basis of designation. So this is it. This is what is recognized. So these Buddhas who are in the space in front of us who recognize the lack of intrinsic existence of self and other and have somehow used that as a basis for understanding that the self-cherishing attitude falls apart when the premise from which it comes about falls apart in its coarse way. Those beings are no longer having to experience what we experience day and night. So anyway, without further ado, all the beings in the space in front of us, the extensive deeds lineage, profound view lineage of blessings. Of course, we have Buddha Shakyamuni, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, Chen Rezig, right here on our planet, imagining all our holy lamas, Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, Geshe Lobsang Gonpo Rinpoche, Umse Geshe Agha Rinpoche, Geshe Dorji Damdul Rinpoche, again, Jeffrey Hopkins Rinpoche, Geshe Eshe Tapke Rinpoche. All these beings we're so fortunate to have had in our lives or can still have in our lives, many of the names that I just mentioned. And I really just I encourage every one of you to please meet with a qualified Mahayana teacher and try to receive as many teachings as you possibly can from that teacher. You all know that I showed up every week, sometimes twice a week, to translate for Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche for over 20 years. And now you would think, okay, Rinpoche passed away, it's time to take a break. But that's not accurate at all. That's not what we've done at all. We've, I think, taken 600 or 700 classes with just Geshe Dorje Damdul since Rinpoche passed away. I know that sounds like, no, it's actually accurate because we take multiple classes on Sunday with Geshe-la. I take a class on Wednesday in Tibetan with Geshe-la, a class on Thursday in English with Geshe-la, a class on Friday in English with Geshe-la, a class on Saturday in Tibetan with Geshe-la, and 2 on Sunday. And then we've been doing that now for, since Rinpoche passed. In 2022, in the summer of 2022, I met Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula. And all that time, we've been every single week, sometimes multiple times a week, taking classes with Umse Geshe Agha. And when Rinpoche passed, that's fall into that winter, we started spending a lot of time with Jeffrey Hopkins and sometimes meeting every single day with him. So as a result of the kindness of Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche and my other teachers, I've come to see that there's urgency. There's something that's more important than everything else, and that's this. And not that I have renunciation, but I can see how Rinpoche had it. I can see how these great beings have it because they have this information to analyze, and you just keep concluding over and over again one thing, and that this just makes sense. So those beings who are in the space in front of us, loving, caring, embracing, looking into our eyes like the most kind person in the universe looking into your eyes, like a mother looks at her only child, or whoever looked at you like you were the most important person in the universe, that's how they're looking at you. And that person who looked at you, if it wasn't an enlightened being, probably had that attachment, that pain that would come with the love, that pain that would come with the compassion that skewed the decision making sometimes. But the Buddhas don't have that pain that comes with the love and the compassion that skews their decisions at any times. And they're looking into our eyes with pure eyes of, I will help you. I have something to offer you. You don't have to give me anything except your practice. Practice what I'm teaching you, and that will make me the happiest being in the universe. Not that there are not already happiest beings in the universe, but you understand my point. These are the beings we're imagining. Now imagine we bring all sentient beings here. We began the teaching by saying, may I give this teaching in the language of all the sentient beings that are in the universe. We know hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods. Invite them all here. They can hear us. We've already invited them at the beginning of the teaching saying, may I proclaim this Dharma. But now let's make it a concrete feeling in our mind that we've brought everyone here. Bring your friends here, people you're closest to, those people you love so much that don't know about this solution, don't know how to make their minds feel better, don't know how to make their minds stop worrying. And you don't have a clue how to tell them how to. You don't know the first thing you should say to try to help them. But here it is. Just imagine they're all showing up, and the way that this is coming out is the way that they need to hear it. Imagine all of your loved ones are being brought here. Now bring all the strangers here. You know, the strangers that you see, you can I can see the faces of some of the, people at the grocery store. I don't go a lot of places. I'm always talking about the grocery store. You can see how boring my life is. Yeah, the faces of these random checkout people at the grocery store, or, people working in the doctor's offices at the reception desk, and the nurses helping who, I maybe know the name of, but they're kind of strangers to me. I think of all of them and try to bring them here and recognize every single one of these beings just mentioned wants happiness and wants to be free from suffering and doesn't have a clue how to get it, just like you. And here we are learning how to get it. We're so fortunate. Now imagine you bring those difficult people here. No one has ever become a Buddha with a biased attitude. No one has ever become a Buddha saying, I love every single sentient being in the universe except you. I want every single being in the universe to be free from suffering except you. We have to somehow reconcile our minds with this idea that beings are out of control, just like we're out of control. And we bounce into each other like pool balls, being smashed around by our self-grasping ignorance, our karma and our afflictions. We have these relationships. I create karma to suffer. We have a relationship. So then you come yell at me. And then somehow I think that there is this independent yeller that should be punished because there's an independent me being yelled at. And that independent yeller, I don't have a relationship with other than they're a jerk. I can't see, like I was talking about before we started, before I hit record, that every single one of you have been my mother. One of the students, Priscilla, mentioned something so beautiful. Happy Mother's Day to me. All sentient beings are a mother. All sentient beings have been my mother. I've just merely forgotten. I've forgotten because of the dramatic trauma that occurs when I died in the life where you took care of me when I was so vulnerable. And then I was thrust into another set of aggregates, and all I could do is know who I was what based on what's in front of me. And everything that was before, I forget. But as we become more and more meditators, if you will, supposedly, we will be able to start to not only logically conclude that you were my mother, therefore I was I, so you are my mother. We can say that loosely because nothing intrinsically exists. The I is merely imputed. So that imputed I has been cranking around since beginningless time. and thinking it is the basis of designation, been cranking around and making all mistakes based on that, making all kinds of bad decisions based on that. So people we don't like are just making bad decisions based on ignorance. We're seeing them as affecting an intrinsically existent I because we are ignorant, because we haven't applied, you know, a discerning mind whose apprehension of an object tallies with reality. We see them as enemy. We don't see them as mother. We don't see them as the, multitude of things they've been to us, and the mother they've been to us multiple times. We don't see that. The self-cherishing attitude is not a mind that really tallies with reality because it thinks that that's the way to be happy, and it's not the way to be happy. So everybody's trying to be happy in ways that aren't ways that actually make you happy. Everyone's trying to get rid of suffering in ways that don't actually get rid of suffering. So when you run into somebody who's giving you a hard time, they're trying to be happy and trying to get rid of suffering in ways that don't work, just like you've tried to be happy and get rid of suffering in ways that don't work. They're just bothering you right now. The intrinsically existent you that, based on that appearance, makes you feel ways that don't make sense because that appearance doesn't make sense. So now that all the beings are here ready to hear what they need to hear to evolve spiritually, let's imagine that the space in front of us transforms into Rajagriha of Ultra Peak Mountain, where the Heart Sutra is taught, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha taught that everything is empty of intrinsic existence. There's nothing in the universe, no permanent phenomena, no impermanent phenomena that isn't empty of intrinsic existence. Yet, permanent phenomena and impermanent phenomena exist. Their mode of existence isn't intrinsic existence. Their mode of existence is emptiness of intrinsic existence. So we have to come to understand that the mode of existence that we think is true, that we exist from our own side, and that you exist from your own side, and there's no interdependence between self and other, that mode of existence isn't true. That's actually not, that's a wrong view. The belief in intrinsic I is a belief in something that doesn't exist. The belief in intrinsic other is a belief in something that doesn't exist. Belief in self is something that exists, but a belief in intrinsic self isn't something that exists. There's a self that's the object of negation, which is the intrinsic self. And then there's the self which exists. And when we look at how we determine those two things, the emptiness of the intrinsic self is found by ultimate analysis. And the existence of the self that isn't intrinsically existence, that's merely imputed independence upon a collection, that serves as a basis of designation, is realized by conventional analysis. So the Heart Sutra here, when the negations are being made, these non-affirming negatives related to the phenomena that are being spoken of about in that way, are merely stating that these things don't have a mode of existence like we think that they do. They don't have intrinsic existence. They don't exist from their own side as intrinsically one with or intrinsically separate from their parts. They're merely imputed independence upon a collection that serves as a basis of designation. These are words that we'll just keep saying them over and over again, and they have a whole ton of meaning. And I remember I could say these words in 1999, and what they meant then and what they meant now are slightly different. That's a good thing. And I hope in 5 more years it will be even more different. When I say different, I mean subtler, and I mean more in line with why something can't be intrinsically one. Why can't something be intrinsically other than its parts? What does that mean? What is the entailment of emptiness? What is the pervasion that once I find out that those two locations don't have a spot where the self is, when I find out those two locations don't have a spot where the self is, but then there's a self that's operating, then there has to be a mode of existence that isn't intrinsically one or separate from the parts, and that's just subjectivity. Just like physics says, the two-slit experiment says that there's no observed without the observer. I was speaking with someone saying, well, do they say there's no observer without the observed? And I guess the observer is just like, we don't talk about observer. We're just talking about the observed in physics. But so they're saying that this, there's a subjective existence, even though we think there's an objective existence. So anyway, these are words that we have to come to start to work with and understand more and more and more. And we're not going to get to the pith of it this evening. But do know that the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge does not teach nihilism. The Buddha never taught that the self doesn't exist, meaning that I'm not here, Jeff's not talking. The Buddha never taught this. When you hear selflessness, it's a very specific kind of self that the Buddha is saying isn't there. It's not self altogether in terms of Jeff. It's just a Jeff that exists from his own side. A Jeff that's findable under analysis among his parts intrinsically or separate intrinsically, something that I can locate somewhere in my earth, water, wind, fire, space, consciousness. Where is this Jeff as I move towards the basis of designation here? Earth, water, wind, fire, space, consciousness. And then if I say this Jeff doesn't seem to be findable within this basis of designation, this intrinsic Jeff that feels so real, then what about somewhere else? And then that's absurd to think there's a Jeff somewhere else other than here. So there has to be a mode of existence of Jeff that isn't like I'm normally thinking about, because the way that I feel about it and it appears to me, my experience with it is that there's something concrete and findable here, sometimes here if I'm pricked by a thorn. Sometimes I feel like the aggregates are just containing a self that's separate in some way, that there's two entities there, self and aggregates, and there's an operator. Sometimes I feel that the self is one with the aggregates. Sometimes I feel it's separate from the aggregates. Sometimes I feel it depends on the aggregates. Sometimes I feel the aggregates depend on it. Sometimes I feel like it's an operator or possessor of the aggregates. Sometimes I feel it's the collection of the aggregates. Sometimes I feel it's the special shape. But then when I look at all those things, I can't find this I intrinsically existing among these different options. And this is the 7-point analysis of the chariot. When I look for a chariot among its parts or separate from its parts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm not able to find it as intrinsically there. Likewise, when I look for the Jeff as intrinsically one or intrinsically separate from my parts, it's not there. And all the other 5 really relate to the first 2 of the analysis of the chariot. So anyhow, yeah. This second turning of the wheel of Dharma is where the Buddha handed us the medicine that will get us out of samsara. If we don't understand the Madhyamaka Prasangika philosophy, we won't get out of samsara. Tantra won't work. Tantra's basis is the Madhyamaka Prasangika philosophy. Yes, the mind-only view is helpful in understanding Tantra, but it's not correct. The mind is not intrinsically existent. The clear light mind is empty of intrinsic existence. We have to, if we're going to be serious about this, and why not be serious about it? There's nothing else that matters more important than this. We have to make sure that we're getting the accurate information, we're being patient, we're going through it systematically, and we're willing to take small bites at a time to be able to eventually be full. If we try to just take all the food all of it once, we're just going to get sick. We have to be able to do this in a methodical way. Understand what this emptiness is about, not come up with this idea that nothing exists because we haven't studied enough, not coming up with an idea, oh, there's no self, so don't worry about it. There's no self to suffer. We really owe it to ourselves. We've suffered for too long. We've been worried for too long, as Janjarupi Dorji says in his text on tenets. We've been worried for too long, and it's needless. All sentient beings are worrying needlessly. May they have freedom from that worry and that suffering. We're all interdependent. Your suffering affects me, and my removing your suffering makes me a Buddha. My not removing your suffering, not wanting to remove your suffering, makes me a me. Look at the difference between a Buddha and a me. Yeah. Sutra. So in explicitly, we find out what will eject us from samsara, the wisdom realizing emptiness. And implicitly, we find hidden within here the five Mahayana paths. We find the liberating path being the main subject matter, which is emptiness. The wisdom realizing emptiness is the main subject matter. Emptiness, ultimate reality, is the main subject matter. And then the secondary subject matter, the not main subject matter, implicitly or hidden within it, is the ripening path of the five Mahayana paths, the ripening paths of path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. Those pathways that the bodhisattva goes through, becomes a bodhisattva, and then goes through in order to see emptiness again and again and again as a bodhisattva. And the impact of the realization of emptiness as a bodhisattva is much more strong than the impact of the realization of emptiness if you just have renunciation in the hearer solitary realizer path. So the impact of that realization of emptiness starts to dig in on different types of afflictions eventually, imprints of afflictions eventually, that without bodhicitta they will not be dug in onto. Yeah. Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha, Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks and a great gathering of the Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita address in this way? Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness, there are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear. Here, let's do the right. No form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. That's a much better translation. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no up to no ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death. Let's try that again. No suffering, no origin of suffering. No dhatu of dharmas, no mind conscious dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Te ata om gate gate para sangate bodhiso. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Kala just in case you're a sharp practitioner that can realize the Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom, with just this one syllable, Apparently, there are those of you out there. Kala bene jodamba nengu du ju nga yi du do jen du babo lama yi ju sin zi ne sung gondo so la sha zelo aga zamara da jandara zamara eve aga zamara da. Agha Samara Chandara Samara Abede Ata Ungate Gate Baragate Barazangate Buddhizo Baba Gonjasanji Gaye Dimijo Jishil Badaji Mebadaji Shawadaji Dagi Baji Medo Bija Danji Jedin Koreas Oh Ha Kirin Danja Jishe Wadan Midun Bejan Danda Wadan Dumbadan Jin Bon Son Son Joji Daji Jadon Tashi De Janden Dade Lejo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers. This is a request for teaching, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lama's eye, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready. Shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jewel mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje jel dan zoji jel nan la janjo badu da ni jazu ji dagi jinzo. Chushe jipe son nan ji do la benje sanje du ba sho sanje jel dan zoji jel nan la janjo badu da ni jazu ji. Dagi chushe jipe son nan ji do la benje sanje du ba sho sanje jel dan zoji jel nan la janjo badu da ni jazu ji. Dagi chushe jipe son nan ji do la benje sanje du ba sho. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Now let's read from the source of all my good, which is the basis for this whole discussion. But again, we went through the stanzas and got to the great vehicle and got to aspirational bodhicitta and just stopped the vehicle for a moment that was heading towards we were in the aspiring bodhicitta and heading towards engaged bodhicitta to heading towards the need for calm abiding and special insight and doing all of these things set up for Tantra. So before we went forward even to get to engaged bodhicitta, we stopped at the aspiring bodhicitta to find out what the heck is aspiring bodhicitta and how do I get it? How do I become a bodhisattva? How do I take what I've learned about myself and then turn that renunciation towards others and generate compassion? How do I do that? So we've stopped and started discussing how to do that in terms of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and Arya Sangha. And we spent a long time on that, and hopefully it had an impact on your mind. It really did on mine. And now we're going to spend a long time on the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice that shows us how to get aspiring bodhicitta passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri to Arya Manjushri, Arya Nagarjuna, down through to Bodhisattva Shantideva and Lama Tsongkhapa explaining all of this equalizing and exchanging self with others practice through the lens of Bodhisattva Shantideva. So we're really fortunate, and we've got a lot of really good commentaries. The Minyak Kunsan Sunam's commentary on the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, the Professor Douglas Duckworth translated, the Great Home. Wow, what an amazing, amazing commentary on the Bodhicharya Avatara. It's the largest one in Tibetan language, and there's actually over 100 commentaries on the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life in Tibetan language. It's one of the most written about books in the Tibetan tradition. But the largest one is this Minyak Kunsan Sunam text that Professor Douglas Duckworth translated. And I've been looking at it to try to figure out some of the more difficult points that Lama Tsongkhapa is making in relation to Bodhisattva Shantideva's text. And it's been an incredibly joyful journey. It's been really great. Also, there are parts of it that, of course, it's frustrating as you read things, Arya Nagarjuna and Acharya Chandrakirti, that are just so complex that it's so hard to hold it all together. But as you become more and more familiar with the writing style and the way of thinking about the lack of intrinsic existence and entities and isolates and so forth, it starts to make a whole lot more sense. Appropriators and appropriated, it all starts to make a whole lot more sense. Not complete sense, but a whole lot more sense. Complete sense would mean, oh, you saw emptiness. You knew the object of negation. Yeah. But more and more sense means you're getting closer to identifying the object of negation for me. So I want to thank all of you for allowing me to, week after week, share these things with you to be able to enhance my mind to move hopefully closer to this goal of bodhicitta, becoming a bodhisattva. And once you do that, aside from a couple of stumbling points where you could lose your bodhicitta, it's pretty much a go from there of joy to joy to joy, being considered the most important kind of one being around the second you generate this mind, because you're the one who's working for others' needs. And you're the one who, like a prince, will become the king, will become the Buddha because of the lineage, the superiority of that lineage. The source of all my good, the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to them in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow them with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish, and never stop to wish, that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what the positive and negative, white or black means positive and negative, and what those deeds will bring to me follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs that we do, and try and carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. We know that virtue is very fleeting, and non-virtue is something that we're more accustomed to. You know, the moments of virtues are like flashes of lightning in the dark, and the darkness is the most of the time that we're operating. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. As I mentioned this in the beginning of the teaching, I can never get enough of them. They're not satisfying. They can't be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of liberation. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. This renunciation, these pure thoughts of wanting to get out of cyclic existence, may these pure thoughts lead me to watch my mind through mindfulness and introspection to make sure that I know that samsara can't be trusted. Am I remembering that? Am I remembering samsara? Samsaric splendors are the door to every pain I have. Am I trying to strive day and night for the happiness of freedom? Because that's what I'm trying to be mindful of. And I should have a spy in my mind making sure that that's exactly how I'm behaving. I'm behaving in such a way that's the way someone behaves who wants out. Am I thinking in such a way about samsara in a way that's reality, or thinking that the honey on top of the blade is something I should lick, on top of a razor is something I should lick? Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and recall what I should be doing. If my mindfulness loop is lax, I forgot I want to get out of samsara. I better have introspection, the spy in my mind, watching to see if that's happening, so that mindfulness can go back and get the intention, the correct way, the thing that I'm not supposed to forget. That's what this means. May I recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality, the pradamoksha vows, the essence of my practice. They're the root of Buddha's teachings. Am I keeping my vows? Am I abandoning the 10 non-virtues? Am I keeping the 5 lay vows? Am I doing that? You know, I have a spy in my mind. I'm supposed to remember to do that. If I start not doing that, there better be something in my mind to go, hey, mindfulness, grab what you're supposed to be thinking about, what you're not supposed to forget. Mind, don't forget. Grab it. Mindfulness, grab the object that you're supposed to be paying attention to. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. And that's where the car stopped. I'm going to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Okay, how do I get to a point where my mind is just saying, okay, I'm going to take it upon myself the task of bringing every single sentient being to a state of happiness and bring every single sentient being to a state that's free from suffering? How do I make my mind actually operate that like that with an altruistic intention? Altruism, the step before bodhicitta in both the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice and the 7-point cause and effect for realizing bodhicitta, is a mind that has concluded that I myself will take it upon myself the task of freeing every single sentient being from suffering and bringing every single sentient being to a state of happiness. And then there's a recognition within that altruistic intention that I can't do that, and it's only the Buddha who has the capacity to do that. May I become a Buddha upon this recognition, upon this discovery, upon this thing that I'm proclaiming I must do. Uh, um, I discover I must become a Buddha to actually take on myself the task of freeing them all, to actually help to get sentient beings to discover how to free themselves. That's how I would free them. Would require me to be a Buddha, to be able to know what to say, when to say it, who to say it to, how to say it, where those beings are that I need to say it to. I can't even locate all sentient beings, as I said before. So grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I'm not well trained in the three moralities, I can't become a Buddha. Grant me then this fierce resolve to master the bodhisattva vows, master the engaged bodhicitta, master the 6 perfections, the 10 perfections, the 18 root, the 46 secondary bodhisattva vows. And grant me that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, calm abiding, quiets your mind from being distracted to wrong objects. Your mind is sitting peacefully, calmed from external distraction, and sitting peaceably on the object of observation. And in this case, it's emptiness, because it's a union of calm abiding and special insight. So the calm abiding is, calmed of uh, external stimuli, sensory perceptions, and it becomes an internal object. So the wrong objects are, mind is quiet from wrong objects, and now it's focused on the correct object, and the correct object is an analysis of emptiness of intrinsic existence. So this analytical meditation becomes combined with the stabilizing meditation and creates a union of calm abiding and special insight, where the special insight actually activates your already achieved calm abiding and makes it like super powered wisdom. Grant that I may practice that once I practice well the past shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. These days, I'm hearing everybody wants to just start with Tantrayana, but Lama Tsongkhapa very clearly says that once I practice well the past shared and become a vessel that's worthy, a vessel that, a basis that actually could practice it. Doesn't mean worthy like I'm not worthy. It doesn't mean it like that. It means that I don't have the causes and conditions that are necessary for Tantra to work. The causes and conditions that are necessary for Tantra to work are the common paths. Once I practice well, the shared paths, the common paths of the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, and the teachings of beings of great capacity of the perfection vehicle. These are the common paths that Lama Tsongkhapa is talking about that must serve as a foundation for Tantrayana. Just like renunciation serves as the foundation, we have to know our own problem if we want to get others out. So renunciation serves as the foundation for bodhicitta. The common paths serve as the foundation for Tantrayana. So it's I can enter then, if I have these common paths, the holiest door to come inside for the fortune and good, which is the tantric path. And the way I get into the tantric path is through an initiation. The entrance to the Mahayana is bodhicitta, the entrance to Tantrayana is an initiation. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, once I've taken this initiation, once I've entered Mantrayana, Tantra, through the door of an initiation, I have to be certain about one thing, that if I want to get anywhere in Tantrayana, the cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. That means that I don't just get a pass and get to act crazy and act any way I want and say I'm a tantrika. I have to make sure that my 10 non-virtues, the ethics that abandon the 10 non-virtues, are clean. My bodhisattva vows are clean. My tantric vows are clean. And if that's the case, then I could actually have some sort of attainment, something actually occur. If not, nothing will occur. So if I don't have the common paths, nothing's going to occur with Tantra. And if I don't keep, once I do, and then I enter Tantra, if I start acting like a maniac and don't keep my vows, nothing will happen. Lama Tsongkhapa is so kind to us because this is not the common points made in the world today. No. We are very fortunate individuals to be able to hear this information. These are not the common ideas that are just tossed around usually. They're not for everyone. Everyone, a lot of people hear these and they think it's just, oh, all this information, this is stop. And then other people hear this and think, oh my God, this is the only thing that will stop all this information. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in, never leaving off the practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. May you all live long and fruitful lives. And if you become a Buddha before I become a Buddha, please don't forget, don't forget Thursday nights. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me or outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. Okay, so we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa. Great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, specifically the section on equalizing and exchanging self with others, and specifically the section of the 2 obstacles that will keep you from being able to really engage in this practice. And it's that prison that I talked about at the beginning of the teaching, that prison where I think that you and I are intrinsically different, that self and other are intrinsically different. And Lama Tsongkhapa comes to remind us that this is a perspective, just like over there and here. Just like when I get over there, I'm here, and then here is over there. It's just merely a perspective. And it's not like blue and yellow. It's merely a perspective that is assigned to the same basis of designation. And at the time, that perspective seems that that is exactly what the thing is. That perspective makes us cling to it as intrinsically being what that perspective says that it is. But once we realize it's merely a perspective, then there can't be an intrinsic difference between these 2 things that are merely imputed in dependence upon a perspective. So Lama Tsongkhapa says that self and other are merely imputed in relation to a particular reference point and do not intrinsically exist. So this is a loosening of our idea that there's an intrinsic difference, an essential difference between self and other. It's not saying that you and I aren't like different entities, but they are not intrinsically different entities, and I am not intrinsically self because you are willing to say that I'm other while looking at the same basis of designation. There's no intrinsically existent self or other that is more than the reference point of the designator. Okay, so that's the first thing that Lama Tsongkhapa says is a hindrance to us being able to understand that we need to cherish others more than ourselves. Obviously, if I think there's an intrinsic difference between myself and you, then that, and it's not a particular reference point, then yeah, it makes sense. And number two, you must remove the obstacle of thinking. I will not make an effort to dispel others' suffering because others' suffering do not harm me. So we see if there's interdependence, so there's interdependence between the self of today and the self of my next life. There's an interdependence there. But they're different. We can't say that the self tomorrow, I mean, even science would say all my cells, everything will be completely different, tomorrow. Every moment there's change that's taking place. Um, so so here it says, I will not make an effort to dispel other suffering because other suffering doesn't harm me. It would be like, okay, so I don't need to put money in the bank because that old guy that I'll become if I get to live, to be that, um, having money or not having money isn't going to affect me because they're different than me. So it's like the same kind of logic and saying like, oh, well, there's something different so than me, so it doesn't make sense to try to remove the suffering of it. It doesn't make sense then if it's different for me to try to engage in virtue and confess my negativities so that in the future, in my future life, I don't suffer because that future life suffering won't affect me. You see, there's some logic here that's being put forth that starts to shake this idea of intrinsic existence, which starts to shake this idea that, oh, these parts are intrinsically mine. It starts to shake this idea of this intrinsic continuum of this I that just goes on and on and on and on and on. It starts to shake that. It'd be like not accumulating wealth in your youth out of fear of suffering in your old age because you think that your suffering in old age doesn't harm you in your youth. Or, as stated in engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds, it would be like not alleviating the pain in your foot with your hand because your foot is other than your hand. Old age and youth are similarly, are old age and youth or similarly, former and future lives are just illustrations. This principle applies also to morning and evening, former and later days, and so forth. Eating so I'm not hungry later. Why does it matter? Oh, I better have a good breakfast because I don't know that I'll have lunch today. I feel like, those are it's the same person, but it's not. This is something that's hard to reconcile. It is in terms of imputation, but there's no intrinsically existent thing there that I'm so worked up about. Quam, but old age and youth. So this is what we would all say. This is what I would say to whoever said all of this to me. But old age and youth are one continuum, and the foot and hand are one collection. Therefore, they are not the same as self and other. The response: continuum and collection are designated to many moments and to many parts. They do not have a self sufficient essence. The self of yourself and the self of others must be posited to a collection and a continuum. So self and other are not established by way of an essence that can be posited independently. So you see that this I is merely imputed in dependence upon a collection. There's an appropriator and an appropriated. There's an I that's imputed in dependence upon a collection of among the 4 or 5 aggregates, but the I and the basis of designation are mutually exclusive. And the moments of that I are mutually exclusive. And even the body isn't the same body scientifically from one moment to the next because the cells are always just changing. So there's something that we're willing to take care of other. However, since beginningless time, you found your your own suffering unbearable because you've been conditioned to self-cherishing. You've been conditioned since beginningless time to this addiction to yourself. And you've been addicted to thinking that these are yours. The view of the perishable collection. I and mine are intrinsically existent. My hand is intrinsically mine. I intrinsically exist. I am an intrinsic possessor of this. So since beginningless time, we've had this wrong idea that we intrinsically exist and this collection is us. There, and we've been conditioned to think that this is what we take care of. We don't take care of others. And this conditioning, this way of thinking, has made us suffer over and over again because it doesn't tally with reality. We don't intrinsically exist. We don't have this findable I that stands on its own without support, that isn't dependent upon other. So when we see, if we remove other, I goes away. If we remove self, other goes away. If we remove other, self goes away. They just don't make sense anymore. This interdependence is necessary. You remove one, the other one doesn't make sense anymore. So there's this interdependence. And if you become conditioned to cherishing others, just like you become conditioned wrongly to cherishing yourself, if you become conditioned to cherishing others, you will give rise to an attitude of finding others' suffering unbearable. So it's this conditioning that says that I'm more important than you without any reason. How could I be more important than 8 billion human beings? How could that make any logical sense? Because it's me. That's all I can say. And it doesn't make any logical sense. Well, who is you? Well, it's just me. But then when I find that's just an idea, the idea that this is what I should protect, and this idea that this is what I should protect and shouldn't protect anything else keeps me in that prison and doesn't allow me to put my hand out to you and feel the warmth of your hand and feel the openness of my heart. It doesn't allow me to do that. This self-grasping ignorance, this bifurcation. Acharya Dharmakirti in the Pramanavartika Karika says, I see myself, then I see other. This bifurcation causes attachment and aversion. Think about it. I see myself, I'm attached to myself, and then there's other. Okay, you're other. So I've got to get what I need from me, and the heck with you. Yeah. So, and then all other forms of suffering ensue from that. And all the killings and all the non-virtues come about from this idea of seeing yourself, seeing other, and then being attached to yourself and have an aversion for other. And then all the non-virtues come about through this wrong idea. And then later on, Acharya Chandrakirti says that the Arhat sees that the basis of designation, that are these sentient beings are merely imputed in dependence upon a basis of designation. The Arhat recognizes this and generates compassion and love for them. So after you have eliminated the obstacles to exchanging self and other, so seeing intrinsic difference, seeing the lack of logic in taking care of someone who is other because they aren't yourself, the lack of logic in not seeing the interdependence of self and other. After you've eliminated the obstacles of exchanging self and other in this way, so the ultimate truth isn't most of the time these taught in the first in the Lojong teachings. It's taught at the end. If we look at the 7-point thought transformation by Geshe Chakawa, it begins actually with emptiness, ultimate reality, but a lot of times the order is switched. But here Lama Tsongkhapa goes right out of the gate with ultimate reality to show us how the self-grasping ignorance keeps us in a jail, And that belief in our intrinsically existent self and intrinsically existent other, then that belief then causes the self-cherishing attitude to make sense to us because the premise we're starting from is wrong. So after you've eliminated the obstacles to exchanging self and other in this way, the actual way to meditate is as follows. Out of attachment to self, your self-cherishing attitude has produced all sorts of undesirable things throughout the beginningless time of cyclic existence up to now. So since beginningless time, your self-cherishing attitude keeps producing things that you don't want. Keeps, like we said, you see yourself, then you see other. See yourself as intrinsically existent, then you see others as intrinsically existent. Then you say, okay, I'm important. I'm me because I'm intrinsically existent. And then you become attached to yourself and have aversion for others. So since beginningless time, this vibe that you've had out of attachment to yourself, your self-cherishing attitude has produced all sorts of undesirable things since beginningless time of cyclic existence up to now. Although you wanted to make things perfect for yourself, you emphasized your own welfare and engaged in improper methods. You have spent countless eons at this, but have not at all accomplished your own or others' aims. Not only have you not achieved these, you have been tormented only by suffering. If you had replaced concern for your own welfare with concern for others' welfare, you would certainly have already become a Buddha long ago and would have completely and perfectly accomplished your own aims as well as those of others. As you did not do this, you have spent your time uselessly and laboriously. Wow, that's a strong statement. Because you didn't realize that you should care about others more than yourself, you've wasted all of your time. And it says, as you did not do this, let's reread it. If you had replaced concern for your own welfare with concern for others' welfare, you would certainly have become a Buddha long ago and would have completely and perfectly accomplished your own aims as well as those of others. As you didn't do this, you have spent your time uselessly and laboriously. Boy, haven't we worked so hard and come up with nothing over and over again? It's so true. Make a firm determination by thinking, now I understand the faults of self-cherishing and the benefits of cherishing others. See, this I that I'm taking care of, this intrinsic I, it doesn't exist. So taking care of it doesn't even make sense. The belief in the intrinsic I keeps me suffering over and over again. So taking care of this thing that doesn't exist doesn't make sense. The intrinsic I doesn't exist. The I exists, but exists through mere interdependence, mere dependence, mere reliance, a mere meeting. Make a firm determination by thinking, now I understand the faults of self-cherishing and the benefits of cherishing other. And we're going to, by the way, this section on the emptiness, I'll read you later the Minyak Kunsan Sunam points about it. And then there's a lot of other points that are made in some other texts. But I'm here to tell you that these first 2 points in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, the obstacles to developing the self-cherishing attitude, are so extremely subtle. I've read it at least 30 or 40 times. I mean, this week. And looked at the commentaries and about these, what are the distinctions between these two problems? How do you differentiate between these two problems? What's the difference between just the perspective that's being mentioned here and this other seemingly perspective? So just have patience with yourself and just keep rereading these things again and again to see what is the problem, to see why can't I seem to cherish you? Why do I seem to only cherish myself? and as a result of that, have to keep experiencing suffering over and over again and not have the highest amount of happiness that I have the potential to have. Make a firm determination by thinking, now I understand the faults of self cherishing and the benefits of cherishing others. With great effort, relying on mindfulness and introspection. Again, it says vigilance, but that I translate it as introspection. I will discontinue the present self cherishing, my greatest enemy, and I will not allow any potential self cherishing to arise. In this way, frequently stop self cherishing. So, how do you stop self cherishing? You have mindfulness and introspection. Okay, I'm supposed to remember that I'm supposed to cherish others more than myself. I'm supposed to remember the downfalls of the self cherishing attitude. If I know the self cherishing attitude is awful, then I'm probably going to remember not to have it more. So I need to remember the self cherishing attitude is awful. I need to remember the benefits of the other cherishing attitude. And then I need to cherish others more than myself because of the obvious conclusion that I make based on what makes sense. So in order to make sure I'm doing that, to perpetually keep building the strength of my mind, need to have a spy in my mind seeing how my mind is really operating. Am I disregarding or am I oblivious to you? Or am I engaged in everything I'm doing for you? That's what we're checking our mind to see. Am I disregarding you? Am I oblivious to you? Or am I doing everything in my life for you? That's a big order to ask of us, isn't it? Asking ourselves questions like that, seeing if we're really practicing, asking ourselves in every moment if we can, because Guntan Deme Drome says each moment we want to put a virtuous imprint in our mind. Each moment having that spy seeing, like, we want the kind of perfect virtue we talks about: abandon evil, engage in perfect virtuous action, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. We want those perfect virtues. We want those perfect virtues that come from bodhicitta. Am I thinking of doing things for my own benefit or the benefit of you? It's such a shift in perspective, speaking of perspectives, that we have to change, that it's going to war, people get hurt. It's not going to be a comfortable process because we're going up against our natural habituation since beginningless time, our addiction to ourselves, our addiction to me, 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 me. And then when we're done with me, let's do some more me. This addiction. It feels so uncomfortable to think of, even when you talk about it, taking care of somebody outside of your core just as much as the people in your core. Even that sounds, wow, like how? How do I do that? So we have to make a firm determination that, okay, slowly I understand there's faults of self-cherishing, and we're going to go through all of them. We're going to read so many commentaries. You're going to be definitely clear on why the Buddha and the Indian commentators and the Tibetan lamas, you're going to be very clear on why they all say the self-cherishing attitude stinks, why they all say that everyone's equally important, why they all say that the cherishing others is awesome. We'll hear about this so much that we're going to feel suffocated by the self-cherishing attitude. Yeah. That's what we can only hope for it, that it feels suffocating and then we want out of it. If you're being suffocated, all you'll want to do is be unsuffocated. If you know that the self-cherishing attitude is suffocating you, keeping you from holding another's hand and feeling the warmth, then you'll do everything you can to break out so that you can get to that hand to hold. So, but if not, you won't do a thing. And a war is against an enemy that knows exactly how to get us since beginningless time. It's not going to be pretty. and it's not always going to be fun. But if you need an operation, you got to do it. If you need to do something really painful to, as a result, come out the other side better, sometimes you have to, as Lorinda would know, cut the top of your head off to take something out of it and put the top of your head back on in order to live, in order to have something successful later on happening. That meaning, in this case, successful meaning alive. Yeah. So we know all about doing hard things, and we're willing to do something hard in order to be happy in the future. We're willing to have a painful operation in order to be cured of a disease. We have the disease of the self-grasping ignorance. And even though it's going to be painful and uncomfortable for us to get rid of the self-grasping ignorance and the disease of the self-cherishing attitude, it must be done if we want to be cured. If we want to be cured, if we want to attain health, what does attain health mean? If we want to be free from suffering and achieve the highest amount of happiness, this operation has to occur sooner or later. You can put it off, but you'll just keep suffering and circling in samsara until this operation takes place, which removes self-grasping ignorance and the self-cherishing attitude. Thank you. So with that being said, let's do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Any mistakes that I made, I apologize. I didn't make them on purpose. But if I'm an ordinary being, so it's possible that I made them. And we'll conclude with the mandala offering, and then we'll recite the Vajrasattva mantra to purify any mistakes that have been made. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, in particular, the essential teachings of Venerable Azandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious. Om benzo sato samaya manu balaya benzo sato zeno vajita dida me baba zudogaya me baba zubogaya me baba anoratu me baba sabazidi me brayata sabakama suchi me Kitam shi angoro hom ha ho bhagavan zavada gada benza mame maga benza bava mahazamaya zapa a om ve jarama 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 denjo kala raja morama wajada denjo rilo ongjo ong. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised to Supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase forevermore. Through this virtuous action, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead every being without exception into that enlightened state. In all my lives, may I never be separated from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path and reach then quickly the place where I become myself the one who holds the diamond from my two collections, vast as space, that I have amassed from working at this practice for a great length of time. May I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind's wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and help for beings. All powerful Chenrezi, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And a prayer of supplication to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, my root teacher. May we never be separated in any of our lives. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend, who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om, Ah, Om, Om, Ah, Om, Om, Ah, Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Lord Atishu who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everybody, for your patient listening. I hope all of you practice these teachings. Like I said last week, as Jetsun Milarepa says, if you're hungry, you can't look at a picture of food. You have to eat it. You have to actually eat the food. If you want to have this stuff actually work, you can't just listen to these teachings. You have to actually practice them and practice them consistently on a daily basis. And if you do so, there will be an effect that you appreciate, and that appreciation will keep you going. If you don't do this consistently, you won't have an effect that you appreciate, and there will be no appreciation to keep you going. So, thank you, all of you. This is why I'm here, is to keep myself going and keep reminding myself that the most important thing that I can do is get rid of the self-grasping ignorance and the self-cherishing attitude. And the more and more I remember that throughout the day, the nicer I seem to be. And the more and more I forget that throughout the day, the more I seem to be a jerk. See ya.